Chapter 32. The Shadowed Figure. In the dead of night, Kai found himself awoken by a noise in the room next door. Quietly and slowly, he drew himself out of bed and peered outside his door, only to find a shadowed figure, a person with a hooded cloak over their head, walking slowly and quietly to the front door of the hut. Being both suspicious and curious, Kai quickly grabbed his cloak, threw it around himself, and quietly followed the shadowed figure into the Troust village street, paved with mud that was pitch black with no moon in sight. The air was brisk and cold, and ruthlessly stung Kai's lungs and nostrils all at once. Up ahead in the distance, the figure began to move with a level of swiftness, yet quietness, that made it difficult for Kai to keep up with, a kind of speed and discretion that only a person with a flexible body and soft feet could manage. 20 feet ahead of him, he heard laughing as a torch shone in the distance. Rapidly, Kai moved behind a hut as he watched two drunken Troust drengers with their arms over each other's shoulders sing through the main Troust street. "How to Kiafti! Hold your jaw!" a voice yelled from inside a hut as the two warriors began to laugh under their breath and quiet down. After they passed Kai, just missing him in their peripherals, and turned the corner, Kai quickly shot back out to the side road, closer to the outskirts of town, looking again for that shadowed figure he had seen creeping out of Ragnbjörg's hut. Up ahead, he could just barely make out a figured movement that, with complete faith, he continued to follow. Walking stealthily, Kai realized that this shadowed figure was leading him to a discreet back exit of the Troust tribe, and into an area that was more spread out, with far fewer huts and far more trees. Suddenly he saw the shadowed figure disappear into a hut that sat isolated, hidden, and surrounded by trees. It looked old, like no one had lived in it for years, as it had clearly been abandoned. Kai stood in the front of the door, wondering if his curiosity was worth the risk. "Go in," a prompting urged him from within the deepest recesses of his heart. "You will die," came another thought that made his heart beat more rapidly with both fear and anticipation. "It is your weird," came the prompting again. "It will be your death," said the opposing spirit. And before Kai could stop himself, he found his legs almost begin to move as he slowly pushed the door forward. Having had his eyes adjust to the pitch-black night with only the starry night sky to provide light, Kai, to his shock, found the single-roomed hut empty. "Impossible," he hissed under his breath. "I swear I saw someone enter in here." Slowly, he felt around the straw walls, but found there was nothing and no one inside the hut but himself and a wooden panel flooring. "Am I seeing things?" he began to question. "Was that a spirit I saw?" Standing in silence, he began to question his sanity. Then, just before leaving, a thought shot through his mind that radiated joy throughout his body, as if he had solved a complex puzzle. The wooden logs tied together concealed a hidden trap-door to the entrance of the prison the Trousts placed me in. Maybe this hut has the same. Getting on both his knees, Kai began to feel the wooden floor, knocking on it for the sound of any hollow points. Just as he made his way to the far right end of the hut and tapped, he heard an empty noise, suggesting there was a lack of substance beneath the wooden panel. Moving his hands around the wooden plank floor, his fingers came between a seam that seemed to just slightly separate itself from the rest of the wooden planked ground. Lifting up this seam, he found the wood, too, lifted up. Moving his hand into the place the wood once laid flat, his hands sank, not into dirt, but into empty air. While the dark night concealed most of his vision, He noticed that the place he had lifted the wooden plank was in fact much darker than the surrounding atmosphere. The hidden hole he had now discovered was big enough to swallow him, but as he felt around the circumference of the hole, he found stone bricks gradually make their way deeper and deeper. "It is your weird," his heart said again. "It will be your death," the opposition responded. Taking a deep breath and releasing, Kai slowly descended the steps until his head was now below ground, and in front of him was a hallway. At the end of the hallway, there was a small, glowing light. Creeping as quietly as he could, he made his way towards the end of the hall, and with maximum precision and caution, just barely peeked his head around the corner to a main room where a group of cloaked figures had gathered. Quickly moving his head back to the corner that separated him from the shadowed group, he began to listen.